everyone. I'm the other Jared. With me I have Plazmas, and we are talking about Dead Secret. This is kind of our little review after we played the game. We wish to give our opinions on the game. Just to let you know, Plazmas played from a 2D perspective, watching on the shared screen through Skype without the audio, and then I played on my Oculus Rift with the 3D full VR experience. So, having said that, that is how our opinions are going to reflect. So, personally, overall game rating, as far as what you saw, what do you give it?
I would give it, without any reasons given so far, a 6 out of 10.
6 out of 10, okay. So, now for me, with everything that I've been through, I give it a 7.5 out of 10. And we'll get into why here in a second. So, 2D perspective. So let's get into the horror aspect. And how frightening was it from a 2D perspective?
Most of the time, what scared me is more what I perceived as happening. Like when you were climbing the ladder just about an hour ago, and I saw your arm, I thought it was the arm of the bad guy.
Mm-hmm.
So I was freaked out because I thought, wow, I didn't actually expect him to be there. But nope, it was just your arm. The rest of the time, what normally scared me was your reactions.
Okay. So now, for me, as far as scariness level or fear factor of this game, I have to give it a higher rating because I have to give it like an 8 out of 10 because this game was legitimately terrifying at points, and there are things that you really can't. It's points of the game that you really can't justify unless you're in the VR headset yourself. For instance, when I was going to crop the third video, I think it was, when we were going in that winter forest. And the crows were caw and scaring the shit out of me. And then we went into went down the stairs, and then that horned, masked man that we see throughout the game was looking at me.
Yes, the spirit of the dead guy.
And I was paralyzed. I could not look back to see if he was going to look at me. And moments like that happened throughout the game. And then there was another moment just in the last video where I saw a flash of the guy, and Plasma swore he didn't see it. That scared the shit out of me, and these are things that only the player is going to experience. So, as a player playing it in VR, I give it an 8 out of 10 as far as horror factor, because it is a very terrifying game at certain points. At certain points, it's kind of laid back and boring, but there are points that are pretty terrifying. So overall story of the game, I think we're both going to agree on this. It's probably pretty low. It is a murder mystery, kind of a clue type. You're the detective. You gotta solve the mystery by unlocking clues. But the thing is that unless you play this game from beginning to end in one setting, you're gonna forget things. I mean, right?
Yeah.
And
this is, in the case of this is very much the kind of game that does better if you have the time to, not even maybe one playthrough, maybe just cut it in half. But the gap between the two parts should not be very wide, because you're going to forget things, and that lowers some of the aspects of the fun of the game itself.
Agreed, 100%. Like, yeah, this game is a if you could go through it very quickly knowing what to do, I think it would be a very fun clue-solving game. But with not knowing what to do from a blind playthrough, it did have its moments of lag and boringness, if you will.
Yeah.
So, probably a 6 out of 10 in that area. Um,
But on story merit itself, I have seen worse. I've also seen better when it comes to detective stories. So I also agree the 6 out of 10.
yeah. I mean, it could have been done better. I mean, there were some parts that were cool when she did her dialogue. When you found a little random hand that you could select, and you knew that she was going to give you some voice dialogue. But the whole struggling, trying to get the story thing has been done before, and it didn't make sense to me. The ending that made the most sense to me was what, ending B or C, where she just runs out of the door and leaves. Like,
Yeah.
it was just kind of I don't know, it didn't make sense. Like why she would keep sticking around after all this weird stuff is happening. But
Yeah, because she's not a detective. She's a reporter.
exactly.
If this was a detective and you were literally trying to solve the case of a murderer being stalking around, yes, then I would understand you sticking around trying to stop said person. But you're playing as a reporter. You're not well, some reporters put their lives in danger for this stuff. But I don't see it being the normal thing to do.
Yeah, well, the whole idea of her sticking around was because she had a role model that was like this military woman or something. There was a point in the game where she said, "This is my role model," and she wouldn't have ran away from this story, so I'm not going to run away from the story. But it's like, you know, the person you're talking about didn't have a case where she was running in with the supernatural. But I don't know. It just seemed kind of, I don't know, just a bit of a stretch.
Yeah.
And so story-wise, not the greatest. The puzzles were kind of lame.
They were either too easy or too convoluted.
Yeah, just, I mean, the fact that I've got to sit there and just randomly pick things until I get the right thing doesn't make sense to me. It's just kind of wasting time. This is something that happened when you weren't here, Plazmas, when I had to figure out the right chemical. I just had to put chemicals in front of the flame to see what color they were, and then randomly guess what chemical was the right one to get rid of rust, because apparently she knew, but she didn't want to tell us. It was weird. And it's just an example of how this game is just kind of like taking these mini games just to run the clock.
Yeah, I can understand padding if it's entertaining,
Yeah.
but if it's just random pick and guess, it's not really necessary.
Exactly. So, final score from your perspective, what do you give it?
What category this time?
Survival horror. Just overall, from your perspective from the game, what do you give it?
I'm sticking with the whole 6 out of 10 thing.
6 out of 10, okay. So from my go ahead.
You had to understand, from my perspective, I'm playing as I'm not playing. I am taking the position of everyone else who is watching, except even more devoid of things. For my entire sitting of this, I was watching from 2D. I could talk to you, which is something most of the audience couldn't do. Actually, all of the audience, because you can't respond to Twitch when you're wearing the headset. But also, I couldn't hear any of the sound effects or music.
No. And I feel like that's a legitimate answer. For me, being immersed in the game and having to deal with everything, I give it a 7.5 out of 10. A lot of that is coming just from the fact that I kept wanting to go back to it because I was afraid of the game and I wasn't going to let that beat me. And it wasn't the story. It wasn't anything about, hey, I'm interested in what's going to happen next. It was more about this game has elements about it that scares me, and I'm not going to let them beat me, so I'm going back to this game to prove that I'm not a coward. And to me, that's not really, that doesn't really hold up very well in the overall rating of the game. But it's very good at what it I think it does what it wants to accomplish, and that is an Oculus Rift or HTC Vive. I don't know if you can. I'm sure you can play it with both. Game where they implement how terrifying a game can be, but they put it at positions where it's not terrifying all the time, and you can handle it. And I think the game does that very well. So for that reason, I give it a 7.5 out of 10.
Actually, now that you say that, I agree. With the scares, what it did quite well is it didn't just slam you with it every couple of seconds. It had an appropriate level of build-up until the end, where, of course, you're coming to the climax. You're going to get scared a lot more frequently. But the fact that really the first scare, or what we consider a scare by our reactions, came about because of the first time we put on the mask and demon guy's right there.
Yeah.
And then the point where we were like, oh shit, things are happening, was, episode 2, when the guy was coming up the stairs.
Yeah.
So it has a lot of good build-up.
It does. It does do that well. And, I agree. You have to have you have to take certain caution in an Oculus Rift game, because you can't have, like you said, the constant horror, because you could easily scare somebody so much to the point where they don't even want to return to the game. It's so easily done on the Oculus Rift. For those of you who have never played Oculus Rift, it's hard to explain, but for those of you who have, you understand that playing horror games in an Oculus Rift or the HTC Vive, getting constantly, just when you turn your face and there's something in front of your face, that kind of a scare will eventually scare you away from the game. And so you have to have the right medium for it. You have to have the right amount of it, and you have to do it a certain way. And this game does it well. So for that purpose, this game does it well. But on every other scale, the game doesn't do so well.
For instance, the gameplay itself.
Yeah, the point and click. It's like a Myst game. We've all played Myst.
Point and click in a way can be good, but when you're dealing with a 3-dimensional move around a room scenario, I would enjoy it. I think I would enjoy playing it more, if I even played it, if instead of clicking a direction I want to go in, or clicking where I want to move to, I could just freely control what I do.
I agree. I think that would help.
The only situation I think that wouldn't do well is, once again, the first time the guy's coming up the stairs and it tells you to hide. Mm-hmm. I think at that minute you don't want to move around the room thinking, oh god, where am I going to hide? Instead, it clearly labels out the locations you can hide in.
Agreed. That's a good point. This is a point and click, just like the Myst games and the games of old, where you point and clicked and you found, but it doesn't quite have the satisfaction of a Myst game. It's basically you point, you click, and then you have to wait for your character to move, and while your character's moving, you can look around. But there is a little bit of suspension in the point and click that makes a little bit of sense for those who are playing it on the VR as opposed to those watching. Whereas when you point and you click, I want to look at this point in the room, you can look around as you're walking, as opposed to, well, I'm just walking and looking around. Well, I've committed to this point in the room. now I've got to look around, and it gives a little bit of a horror aspect where, okay, well, maybe I didn't want to walk into this corner of the room, but I've already hit the button, so now all I can do is look around. But nothing ever became of that. The game doesn't really enforce that element as much as it could, where, okay, you've committed to this point of the room, something's going to happen, and now things are happening around you because you've committed to this point. It's really just, well, now you just got to watch your character walk, and nothing happens.
Yeah.
So they could have taken more advantage of that. So the point and click doesn't make much sense. And I agree. Yeah, I think it should just be you control yourself if that's something. If they're not going to do anything with it.
Yeah.
So any other things you want to say about the game before we?
Yeah. To everyone who is going to watch this, because you're watching it now. Hi, people. Yeah. This is just our solid opinion. You should not take this as a gospel truth. Mm-hmm. If you want to play it for yourself, have your own opinion. Do not let anything we've said negative or positive influence if you want to play it or not. Because like with all things, you can only truly have a good understanding of it if you do it yourself.
Exactly. For anybody out there who just got an Oculus or just got AC Vive, looking for a horror game that will ease them into the system, I would recommend this game. For those of you out there who have played horror games on both systems or one or the other, and have an experience for it, maybe wait till it's on sale.
Yeah. Because to the horror connoisseur, this can be a little dry.
Yeah.
Alright, that's all I have.
That's all I have, too. Well, I appreciate everybody listening. Hopefully this helped. And if you have any questions, please leave any comments you have. Be welcome. This has been Plazmas.
And that's been Jared.
And I'm the other Jared. Thanks everybody for watching. We'll see you guys in the next one.